So it looks like we're going to have a pretty small Q&A today. I'm not as big of a pull as Jessica Lyon is. But that's fine by me. I can live with that. Yeah. Yeah, we need to actually add this on the wiki for the scheduling, I think. But we'll talk to Jess with the holidays coming up. That's going to be a little problematic. Yeah, I'm thinking more Thanksgiving and then Christmas. Those holidays sort of mess things up for us in a multitude of ways. So, I guess we might as well get started here, folks. Maybe we'll get out of here before Blue has to teach a class at 1. I'm pretty sure we will. I want to thank you all for coming out. I don't have a lot to present to you this particular time at this Q&A. I do want to plug a few things. I would really like to plug our classes. We've got, 15 classes we're teaching, something like that now, Letta? 15 different classes. Covering all sorts of things, from basic troubleshooting to the advanced and developed menus. We hold classes pretty much every day. Most days there's more than one class going on during the day at varying times. I'd encourage you to spread the word amongst your friends and even your enemies. Tell them about our classes. People that tend to come out to the classes do wind up having fewer problems from what we see. And we do have a small open question and answer session after all of our classes. We do support. We answer questions about all sorts of things in the open Q&A after our classes. How many people here are, hands up, how many people here are actually on either the beta or the 64-bit alpha? Just out of curiosity. How are you finding it, folks? Just out of curiosity. Having some graphics issues, okay. The most common complaint that I've come across with either the beta or the 64-bit alpha is voice. And that and the fact that things have been changed around somewhat. They should all be there, Jen. If I remember correctly, there's actually more Winlight settings on the beta than there were on the previous ones.
If you're having trouble finding any, I don't know, maybe they were renamed. If you're having trouble finding any, provide the names and maybe we can help you look for the ones that you can't find in the list. But there's no reason for Winlights to be taken out, that's for sure.
Interesting, Electronic. I'm actually get the opposite of that.
Oh, well, electronic must be having the same preference freeze that I'm having. Electronic, if let me find my Jira on that. And believe me, it was worse in the test versions that came before before the somewhere in the middle of the beta. I was having a 60-second freeze on opening preferences. But yeah, let me find that Jira for you to comment on so that I'm not the only one in there.
Did you do a restore, Jen? Did you back up your settings on the other one and do a restore? Hmm. I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
CalWL is definitely in there. That one is so popular, it's not going away. I mean, not that the unpopular ones would go away anyway, but we'd be getting loads of complaints if that one simply vanished. However, what I am looking at in the Windlight list is that, yeah, make sure that you're scanning through the whole thing because the different punctuation that some people use before their Windlight settings can sometimes put alphabetical order into different orders than you expect it to. So make sure you're scrolling far enough down that you're actually getting to the C section.
Momo, I haven't heard anybody complaining about that one yet. Not sure what to tell you, to be honest.
Reminds me of an old ATI bug, actually. Driver bug, I mean.
Are you actually on an ATI card, Momo, just out of curiosity? Sorry, Letta. Go ahead.
I was going to say the NB ones, those are Norton's Windlights actually, and CalWL is not going to be one of them. CalWL has no prefix, it's simply there, and it is in between CB's Rouge 6 and Coastal Afternoon.
Tech has not made it back. Tech Wolf Lapindo was here, but he hasn't made it back yet. He's one of our devs. He's actually working on any Linux users here? He's actually working on the 64-bit Linux build. Yeah. So hopefully he'll make it back and have something to say about that.
Yeah, some of our devs have more busy real lives than others, so that can affect how long things take to get done. And okay, electronic, here's the bug report for the lengthy freezes when opening preferences and occasionally when when IMs come in. So if you could possibly add a comment including your sysinfo in there, that would be very appreciated.
Momo, are you on an ATI card, just out of curiosity? ATI/AMD.
Yeah, that's the brand, but not
Yeah.
the manufacturer, rather the assembler, but not the chip brand.
The problem with that electronic is a lot of people, with the number of different distributions of Linux out there, it can be a little difficult from what I understand. I know there's some talk about that happening, but it's a matter of trying to figure it out. That's like one job that I have on my plate at the moment. So I'm almost on a 580.
Hey, Ed. I've got two different numbers for that Jura I put in that I told you about.
Yeah,
the
that's
reverbing.
fine. Yeah, I've got some people looking at it.
Okay.
I have a job on my plate that I'm struggling with, and that's you've all seen the minimum requirements for Second Life on the SL website. We tend to think that's a little bit out of date. The problem I'm having is, what should you suggest as a minimum for running Firestorm? The recommended's really simple. The best you can afford. you know, but to come up with the minimum requirements for running Firestorm is really tough, based on operating systems and hardware. Honestly, it's driving me nuts, or driving me sane in my case. Yeah, see, for myself, I'm on older hardware, but I have very few problems. Yeah, mesh is putting a lot of stress on
I
the
have
viewers.
no problems with my 512 megabyte laptop with Firestorm.
The thing there is, it depends on your setup. Honestly, it really makes a huge difference. Your hardware, your software on your machine, to say nothing of the settings that you set up. Far too many people, in my opinion, set their graphics settings up way too high, and it really does make a huge difference. They expect more out of their computer than their computer can handle. And yeah, Jen, can I pick on you today? Okay. Jen went out and got a computer. What, about a year ago, Jen? Something like that? And it was supposedly a gaming computer. Uh, 2 years ago? Yeah. And I actually, Jim's a friend of my partner, my SL partner here. And we got talking about computers one day. And I took one look at her specs and said, no wonder you're having problems. And I made a couple of recommendations, which Jen went above and beyond. She got a much better graphics card than I recommended. Went with the processor that I recommended. And it's a whole new world for Jen now. She's not struggling the way she was with the old system. But it's, you go to a store and you say, I want a gaming computer. And they say, oh, this will work great for you. And Second Life is not the same as other games. People seem to think that because it runs some game that you install on your computer, that it's going to be able to run SL fine. And SL is far more bandwidth intensive and generally more CPU intensive.
And not content optimized.
Yeah. There's so many variables. Go ahead, Letta.
Yeah, that's really the big thing, that games that are created, that all the content is created by a company. You know, they're able to figure out what they can stuff into the world and still allow people on an average computer to be able to run it decently. Whereas SL, we've got content by everybody. And content creators in SL push the envelope, and they're very innovative, and they create pretty much as fabulous stuff as they possibly can. And the downside, of course, is that fabulous stuff is often going to be render intensive and will contribute to the demand that it places on everybody who's trying to render it. So that makes it very unpredictable, and it makes it stuffed to the gills, particularly when it comes to avatar enhancements, whether it's avatars themselves or accessories and hair and shoes, etc. So it's which tend to be super highly detailed. We love to look at ourselves and to look at each other. Let's face it. And so yeah, it's there's no way to regulate that, and I don't think anyone would want to, which means that that ultimately it falls on ourselves to regulate our own graphics settings accordingly. And to add as well to what Ed was saying about the the quality of one's system. No matter how good quality your system is, there are always going to be limits, and so SL teaches us, when we're open to learning, how to recognize what those limits are and how to be responsible for it, even if it, whether it means what you do in world and how your graphics settings are in world, or being more conscious of what you're running on your computer at the same time as you're running your viewer. So yeah, there are lots and lots of factors that go in. As Ed often says, Second Life, running a computer is not like turning on a television. There are so many different factors going in that it's not size, it's often detail, and it's often size of the textures used, as well as the type of components. So yeah, lots and lots of factors.
My computer is set for high, but I always run it on low because I always figured it was less taxing on my computer. On the performance?
Yeah, you're correct. If you...
I don't seem to crash as much as everybody else.
That's very likely to be true, yeah. However, not everybody's going to be happy using low graphics. I use low graphics, and I'm pretty happy about it. When there's a special occasion and I want to see something in more detail, then I will turn them up. And I will, I'm on a mediocre computer. I mention that a lot because it's old. And, I accept the lag that comes with it. I can't tell my computer, okay, I am determined to run you at high graphics and not lag. It's going to be like, it's going to say back to me, yeah, whatever.
And then go ahead and do whatever it wants to do in the first place.
Which is probably crash. No, I very seldom crash. I almost never crash, but that's largely because I'm at low settings. If I try to run and I am aware of that, if I try to run it at higher settings, not so much.
Yeah,
but
I'm giving it all I've got, Captain.
Yeah, but again, not everybody needs to find their own balance between what they consider to be tolerable in terms of, lesser graphics settings versus what they consider to be tolerable in terms of performance. Some people are absolutely content to have an FPS at 5 while they're running at ultra because that's how much they value what they're seeing over how they're feeling it. That's not me. I'd rather get the decent FPS and not see everything in great detail.
Sweet, it definitely will be faster for you on lower settings. For most people, there are the odd exceptions that I suspect has more to do with the people's personal setup than anything. Electronic, can I repost your question here? Just so that I don't violate TOS now that tech is back.
Oh, funny. Very funny.
The one about Linux, the Linux installs.
Yeah, unfortunately, as soon as I left out of the truck, the AP started, and it reset my computer.
Okay, well, Electronic had a question, comment question, sort of. And there it is.
Okay.
It's actually a suggestion that maybe you can address.
Well, that one I can sort of address, and I'm going to change positions here since I'm talking. Okay, as far as Linux goes, I am currently working on getting a Linux distribution out that's 64 bits and so on, but that's in the future. But along with that, I'm also going to be working on a 32-bit to make it easier to install. So it's just a simple package where all they have to do is download the tarball and then execute one command, which basically unpacks it, puts it in a directory, then they can execute Firestorm. And unfortunately, I just don't have the time to make, for Linux users, what they call adapt-get or something other than that, where all they do is type one command and it automatically installs the packages from a repo, as we call them. But that's a future to-do project that I like to do. But for now, the tarball effect would be good because it works on any distribution. So that's what I'm currently working on right now. I think there is one Linux already up available for install on our current beta release. And if I don't sound too knowledgeable right now, it's because I drive a truck for a living, and I've been on the road for so long, I've been sort of out of the loop a little bit. So there's a few things I don't know about what's been going on. So sorry about that, everyone. Ed?
Thank you. So there's something in the works, and that's something else that I think I want to talk about now that it's sort of come up. And that is everybody's got, I'd like this in the viewer, or you should do it this way, or you should do it that way, or this should be a default, not what's default now. The default should be something else. And we'd be thrilled to be able to do all these things for you. But it's a matter of time. We're a totally volunteer organization. Nobody here makes money off the viewer. Nobody. A lot of us have real-life jobs, and we all have real life that we have to deal with. So time is a bit of an issue there for a lot of people. And quite frankly, you work on something and you work on something, and then people start screaming, oh, you broke this, you broke that. Sorry, we can't please everybody. You really can't. If we can, quite honestly, my opinion is if we can please half of the people out there, we're doing a great job. As for the defaults thing, sorry folks, we have internal discussions about defaults. I'll use a really silly one for you. How many of you use the WASD keys for movement? Anybody here use them? Okay, so we're getting more no's at the moment than we are yeses. There was an internal discussion about it that went on for 2 weeks, and I used the word discussion very conservatively. Okay? But it went on internally for 2 weeks as to whether or not WASD keys should be on by default or off by default. And that's internally. There's no way we can set the defaults up to suit every individual person. Firestorm is by no means a simple viewer. If you know of a more complicated one for Second Life, please let me know. I'd like to check it out. And yeah, there's a ton of options, and it can't suit every PC or a computer out there. I use the word PC to refer to a computer, but Mac users sometimes take exception to that, and some don't. Doesn't matter. If it's just the voice issue, I'd wait. Personally, I'm on the release right now. Anytime that I know I'm going to have to use voice, I'm one of those people that seems to be having the same issue as you. I get the stuttering. Voice will drop out for a couple of minutes. So I'm on release when I don't have a problem with the music. It's just voice for me. But I go back to the release when I'm in a situation where I have to use voice a lot. If it's not so critical, I go back because I really like some of the features that are in the beta or the alpha. They're both the same as far as the features go. Again, it's one of those things. We've got people on the team and a lot of users out there using the beta or the alpha that aren't having any problems. So, it's one of those things, folks. We can't please everybody.
Do you mean like a mobile app or a text-based client? Is that what you meant by the question about Firestorm text user interface?
I thought I answered that one. There's a few of them on the Linden Labs third-party viewer that are not done by us, but there are a few text-based Second Life viewers out there. And there's even a couple mobile ones, too, that will work on Androids.
Yes, and there's one that's compatible with iPad and iPhone. But yeah, you're not. Don't expect one from Firestorm though. That's kind of not what this project does. This project develops for Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux. So it would require developers on different operating systems in order to develop mobile apps, and there are already people doing that and doing a better job than there's any reason to believe we would necessarily do. We did have one on the 1st of April. It ceased to exist on the 2nd of April. Yes, for anybody who does want to try to connect, does want to try to use Firestorm on a mobile device, you do have one option, which is to run Firestorm on your computer at home while connecting to it through your mobile device through TeamViewer or a different kind of remote connection application. But of course, you do need to have your computer on and on at home in order to do that, because you are actually running it through your computer and viewing it through your mobile app. I imagine it wasn't.
So, Letta, did you have anything you wanted to throw out here today?
Thinking.
Okay, Nisa. Take care, hon.
See you, Nisa. Well, all right. Here's a general question for folks who are here. One thing that I've been wanting to do for ages and simply have not gotten around to was going to be to write either a blog post or a wiki page that sketches out how all of the gazillion chat options in Firestorm work together. You know, what each of them does, what each of them looks like, how they're defined, because there's a lot of confusion about what these words are. I was wondering if anyone here would consider that to be a useful thing, a useful resource for yourself or for people that you know.
I would consider that useful because even as a dev, I find that confusing.
Yeah, it can be really confusing, and I know my way around the chat options fairly well, and there are still a couple of things that actually I think behavior changed on a couple of things at one point, but yeah, so people, and the thing about chat options is that people have very specific preferences for how they like their chat to show up, and it's really difficult to help people get back the settings that they had at one point and somehow lost, because nobody knows the vocabulary for describing what they're seeing. And quite often people will come in and they'll simply ask, can you help me get it back how it was? And so you ask, how was it before? And they say, I don't know, just the way that it was before. And there are so many options and actually different defaults at different login modes that we simply don't know what it is that you're talking about if that's all you're able to say. So I've been wanting for ages to put together a visual aid. Yeah, backup can certainly come in handy, but occasionally there are changes that that will create options that weren't there before. So, for instance, a version or two ago, suddenly there were separate options, I believe, for IM and group chat hosts, and so people logging into, I believe it was 440, it might have been 442, suddenly got toasts in the corner where they didn't have them before, and they're like, oh my gosh, where'd these come from? And that's because there was the setting that didn't exist before and it defaulted to on. So things like that, you know. But yeah. So thought I'd put it out there just because I think that if I knew people wanted it, I'd be more likely to get around to doing it.
So everybody say you want it. Come on now. Tell her you want it. Not that I'm trying to create more work for you, Letta, but you know how I feel about having information available for the users, right?
Yeah, I know. No, I wouldn't count on tomorrow, but chat, Momo. If we were doing it in detail, yes. But in fact, we do have a 50-page manual for all of the different options in the viewer. It's called our wiki.
Again, there it comes down to how you read something. We can all read the same passage and come up with a different interpretation of it, right? I love question marks. No, we probably won't see another release until late January, early February, maybe.
And I can offer. And the main reason for that one is because as devs and Linden Labs, we don't like doing releases near holidays.
Been there, done that, right, Tech?
I think there was a couple cases where we accidentally DOS Linden Labs servers, and they come running at us, bitching at us afterwards. I think the most notable one was display names. I think.
Yeah, display names going into Phoenix was the most notable one. We released right before Christmas. Linden Lab was in holiday schedule, and they were sure they had enough back-end support for display names, but basically we broke display names for the entire grid for 3 weeks, maybe a month, before they got it all sorted out again. They were not very happy.
Well, they wasn't happy at the time, but because of that little effect, we did have sort of a positive outcome. Linden Labs now cooperates with us a whole lot more than they did in the past about timing releases and giving us a heads up on stuff.
It was broken for the grid because we were putting so much stress on the display name servers that their service just couldn't handle the load, so it was failing for everybody. So yeah, it was pretty ugly. They were not very happy with us. Yep, exactly, Pantera. The testing they did with server-side appearance was above and beyond anything I've ever seen Linden Lab test. They were very cautious, and some people still have problems with server-side appearance. I'm not going to say they don't, but I think for the vast majority of Second Life users, server-side appearance turned into a big win.
Yeah, I think the one reason Linden Lab did a lot of testing is not only did they want it to work, but they didn't want to have a display name disaster that instead of just involving a display name, which can be, minor annoyance, just imagine the entire grid of nothing but gray avatars or clouds. That would have been far more costly.
Yeah, they actually employed, not employed, they actually invited all the third-party viewer teams out to pylon tests, specifically to test the code. And as far as I know, they tested with each third-party viewer that was willing to do some testing. Well, display names where you can change your name. For example, if you look at Blue's tag.
Assuming you have both display names and usernames, or your own name. Your username is Alex, yes, and your display name is Cassandra Hastings.
Yeah, if you take a look at me, I have the original name. I have not used the display names at all, so I have the original name as you see, first name, last name. So there is what is displayed above me is the actual username, and then above it is your tags that everybody refers to.
Yeah, in Second Life parlance, sometimes Linden Lab will refer to anything that isn't technically the display name is whatever is showing as your name. Correct, Cassandra. They wouldn't have been able to see Cassandra Hastings. But since display names were brand new at the time, people weren't really as upset about that as they probably would be now. At the time, people were not generally expecting that their username and their display name would be different things. So you'll notice anyone who's older than 3 years or so and has their first and last names rather than a single name username. Yeah. Most of us expected to be I signed up as Letterpreneur expecting to always be Letterpreneur. Of course, not everybody who's over 3 years simply goes by their old name, but still. When display names were first when introduced, and which coincided with them getting rid of last names, everything in SL was set up for people who had two names, a first name and a last name. And so the last name of resident was inserted as a placeholder. And since it took a while for people to kind of get used to single named accounts, people would actually refer to resident as a last name. Still do sometimes. It's taken quite a while for people to get used to the fact that resident is not supposed to be a last name. It's supposed to be a placeholder. But it was necessary for older scripts, and so anything that you still see repeating a name using a script that's more than 3 years old, it's going to have resident in it.
And another little thing is that you definitely know that somebody found display names where you see a bunch of Unicode characters in their name.
Well, electronic. Kudos to Linden Lab for the materials. That was a how can I put that? The materials project was actually a much bigger deal for Second Life in general, because it was one of the first real collaborations between the Linden Lab developers and the third-party viewer developers. It was real collaboration. It wasn't Linden Lab saying, yeah, that's a cool idea. Let's change that and do it our way. It was a real-time collaboration between third-party viewer developers from multiple teams and the Linden Lab developers, which is something that I personally would like to see more of. I think if we all work together, if all the developers were to work together, we could make some really cool stuff and some big improvements in Second Life. You're not going to see it across the board. It's not going to happen. For obvious, what I consider to be obvious reasons. I mean, Linden Lab is a business. They're here to make money, folks. That's what they're here for. They're not. Go ahead, Tech.
Yeah, I've already seen some positive effects from the materials project. I'm in contact with a few creators that make avatars, and I've seen some of their previews. They are currently working on not only. Oh, excuse me here. Yes, I'm an old wolf here. Not only are they working on mesh avatars, but they're also working on some of the advanced features of it. So they're taking advantage of materials even as I speak. So their new avatars are coming out will be able to take advantage of it because they like the way their lighting and stuff and the new textures they can put on them now. So we're coming in the pipeline is some pretty neat mesh avatars. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, cross your fingers, but don't hold your breath, Cassandra.
The only thing I don't know that's coming down the pipeline is a replacement avatar for the human shape. Most of the avatar creators I'm with create fantasy characters. But I've heard rumors of a few avatar makers looking at replacing the Second Life avatar with a mesh avatar. And I think a few of them has already done it, but I'm not sure.
As for more realistic, well, I don't know Sweet, but Second Life has become... I've been here for 6 years now, Second Life is a lot more realistic than it was when I started 6 years ago. Especially if you have a machine that can handle the graphics load. That's the problem. The more realistic looking you make Second Life, the more it's going to the more resources it's going to require from a computer.
And one
so
reason
there's a
Second
trade-off. Go ahead, Tech.
One reason that Second Life has gotten more realistic is that not only has Second Life progressed, but has low-end hardware has progressed because everybody's gets new computers every few years. And with all those new computers that you get new graphics cards with them that are capable of handling a lot more than those old computers in which Second Life was ran on many years ago. So not only has Second Life progressed, but also has hardware. So that's one reason with Second Life has gotten more realistic is because everybody's hardware can now handle it.
I'm afraid, Mona, that your question's over my head. Maybe Tech has an idea, or somebody else can address that.
Let's see, object export. Open, edit such files. Yeah, I'm the one that created that one. It is a compressed format. Two of the reasons to basically put the file down. Another reason was that the reason you can't open or edit them was to prevent, was to help prevent, like, we throw obstacles to prevent people from modifying those files and so on. Because the only people that really should be modifying them are the creators themselves, and they can re-export and so on. It's sort of like a griefer protection, but yeah, it's not really, but it's just an obstacle we threw in the way. And also really did compress the file because when I did some testing, I was getting files of 100 megabytes in size, and when I compressed down, it dropped it down to about 10 megs. So it does save a little bit of room. But yeah, if you really want to edit those things, just res the prim in the world and just make your edits to it. I discussed this with a few other people on the team, and they all agree, yeah, we just go and compress it and make it a little bit harder for the griefers to edit and create griefing objects with it, and so on. But that's pretty much what I got. Let's see. How do we open it? That's the only time I save an XML is when I'm doing troubleshooting, so I can read it. Go ahead, Ed. I think I'm finished. That was, Mana, that was the intention when I originally created it, the export capability and so on, when I rewrote it, was that so that a creator or a shop owner can go through there, export all their items, and then just go to OpenSimGrid and import it all there to set up their shop on OpenSimGrids. That was the original intention of my exporter-importer for that. Now, if they happen to have mesh stuff, right now it doesn't work on mesh, but however, Cinders has been working on porting and getting working. What was it? What's the name of that file format? I forget what it was. Collida. Export prims and mesh into Collida files, in which then you can import those things into your favorite 3D editor and make edits and so on, in which a lot of the mesh creators love that feature.
Mona, as far as exporting, you have to be the sole creator of every aspect of everything that you create using our export.
Yeah, that's a requirement by the Linden Lab themselves. Every piece must be checked to see if you are the creator. And if you are the creator, then it gets exported. We do have a few exceptions in there, but that's for the default stuff that's on next ship with the viewer, and everybody's already got it. So, that's the only exceptions. But everything else that you create, you have to be the creator of, and that's a Linden Lab requirement.
As for the physics engine being pulled out, not likely. Physics is absolutely necessary for Second Life.
To answer Mona's questions, currently there's no way to export or import the nav mesh pathfinding stuff. Nobody has really worked on it because pathfinding, and from what I can tell, Ed might might contradict on me. So far, I haven't found anything or anybody really using pathfinding much, unless Ed knows someone that's using pathfinding a lot or something like that. That the Nev match is part of pathfinding.
There was somebody in the group a short while ago who said that they were using pathfinding on their sim, and it was just so astounding because I think they were the first person that I'd come across that I actually copy pasted it into our team chat. I was like, "Look, somebody's using pathfinding," because I don't know if anybody else uses it besides the Lindens.
There's a few out there using pathfinding, but not many that I've seen. It's more complicated than the viewer is.
Mana, I have an answer to that question right there. If you're exporting the shape of the region or something like that, Linden Labs does provide a feature where you can export the terrain of the region, but it is only available to the region owner, not to the state managers, but the region owner has the capability of exporting that. And the reason I happen to know that is because if you export or re-import, you can do a few tricks that you can't do with the client. And and the one sim that currently exploits that trick is aggro, because that's how they set all the ground textures set up. Because you can't set up the ground textures that's on aggro using the client, so you have to export it, do a few tricks and re-import it. But Linden Lab does provide a way to export the entire sim shape and the ground and the textures.
Yeah, you basically export the raw file.
Yeah, that's it, raw file. Thank you.
So, there was a question. What's pathfinding good for? How many of you have pets that you limit to an area? And anybody here have SL pets that you like the Firestorm kitty that was given out at the anniversary, where you define a radius or a box that they can wander around in? Pathfinding gives you a way of defining a path that these objects or creatures can actually wander around on. Okay, and it limits them to them. So you could have it follow set out a nav mesh, which is basically a path that these creatures could walk on and not wander off in other areas. That's a simple example.
It's possible that Linden Realms actually has still the best use of pathfinding that you can find. Of course, I'm saying that without having seen any others, but it's the one that the people, well, you can go there and you can see for yourself the use of pathfinding with the beasties that come and get you, and then you get teleported back.
Question is those regions, are they restricted to premium or not?
Not anymore. No, they were when they were new, and then they opened them up.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out then.
Electronic, I'd say that was probably a glitch.
Do you think they switched those rock monsters to pathfinding? Because they were already there before there was pathfinding.
From what I understand, they were the inspiration for creating pathfinding and for developing it for the rest of the grid. That's how I understand it.
Oh, okay.
What was said? I couldn't hear it.
That that Linden Realms was the first use of pathfinding, and that it was the inspiration for developing pathfinding for the rest of the grid.
Yes, it was, and if I remember correctly, I'm trying to think. I think when our new CEO came in and saw that, wait a minute, you can't do XXX, which was later called pathfinding, and the CEO made that a high priority to get to the grid because every game out there has this pathfinding feature in it, except Second Life. So that was one of the first things that he did was get one of the first projects to push out the door real quick was pathfinding. My understanding of it, that is. Did I die here?
No.
Hey, Chuck or Ed, either one of you. You said nothing's supposed to be exported out of SL because of Linden Labs, right?
Exported, yes. You're talking about the textures, full print textures being
Yes.
able to be saved to your hard drive.
Yeah.
You can do that on the Linden Lab viewer. If they're allowed to do it, we're allowed to do it.
Okay. That's what I didn't quite understand because full firm textures, I've been doing it for a long time. Exporting them.
That's not exporting as such. Okay, but by the exporting, what we mean is exporting a creation, an object, not just a texture, but an actual object.
Okay.
So although I think everybody has at least heard, even if they don't agree with it, the argument, the statement that Second Life is not a game. Nonetheless, it's hard to deny that games exist within Second Life, and well, as we all know, Rodvik has a games background, so it's not very surprising that, as Tech described when he came in, he was inspired to bring more of a games aspect to SL, and it may be argued that that was probably one of the reasons that he was interested in providing pathfinding capability. So yeah, although most people in Second Life who spend their time shopping or clubbing or simply socializing or providing viewer support, may not have immediate use for pathfinding. I believe one of the reasons for it coming in was so that region owners could become creative and innovative and create games on their property that would have a use for pathfinding, such as what you would find in Linden Realms. And that hasn't come to pass because, although the creativity I'm sure is there, Second Lifers are unendingly creative. Nonetheless, people who want to play games are probably off in actual game platforms, not Second Life, for the most part.
I think another opinion I'll throw out there was that because Second Life was such a social platform and was such a poor setup for games and everybody is so used to not playing games on Second Life that when pathfinding came down, I can't talk today for some reason. When pathfinding came down the line, so few people took advantage of it because all the people that wanted to play games were already off on the game platforms. But the one thing I was going to mention, most of the gamers in Second Life, I think, are mostly role players, and you don't really need a good game environment to do role play in.
Yes, or they're in combat roleplay where your opponents are other people rather than animated objects that roam around the sim.
Well, I'm going to take exception with what you just said, Sweet.
Yeah,
SL is not just anything. There's no just. It is. It's as real or as fantastic as you want it to be. I mean, you can make real life money here. You can do nothing but play games, and everything in between.
I have to throw this out there because it's just one of those facts. Another reason Second Life is still popular today, because as to my knowledge, it is the only 3D game self-made gaming environment, or chat room, as one person called it, that allows adult content. Every other 3D grid or 3D chat grid I've been to, they all have restrictions on that stuff, except Second Life. As far as to my knowledge, Second Life's the only place that allows adult stuff.
So to respond to Sweet's no loser and no winner to be considered a game. No one up here on this platform is calling it a game, but we're also not calling it a chat room. It's a platform that allows a range of activities, and as we all know, it is what we make it. It can be an employment environment. Lots of people, well, not lots of people, some people make their living in here. It can be a chat room. Some people come here solely to socialize. Some people do come here to play games. When I'm not doing Firestorm stuff, I'm playing trivia. That's what I do in Second Life. I write trivia, I host trivia, I play trivia. I am the trivia person. Open chat trivia. And, that's a game. I'm using Second Life as a very big social game. That doesn't mean that that's what everybody is in here for. So it's, some people come here solely to do combat roleplay. Some people come here to escort, so it's there's such a huge range of things you can do here that it's never just one thing or another.
Also, I've seen a lot of clubs in Second Life. A lot of people DJ in Second Life also.
Basically, it's a virtual world, and you can do whatever you want here, for the most part, folks. And it really is up to you what Second Life is to you. My big point here is it's not just this, and it's not just that, and it's not just the other thing. It's, well, to quote Linden Lab, your world, your imagination.
Yeah, and because so many people see it as a game or something like that, and they're so used to a gaming environment, that's where you get griefers from. Because you think, oh, if I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do it because they're allowed to do it in any games, and that's where so many griefers come from. The reason I mention this is because, some of the griefers out there, they are not intentionally griefing, they're just playing the game, they think. And that's one of the problems that Second Life has. But, that's... so if you see griefers out there or something like that, you might want to educate them a little bit, because not all of them are griefers with bad intents.
So to roll this subject back into a sort of support or Firestorm context, the Second Life is kind of made up of lots and lots of pockets of people who are just doing their own thing. Thanks for coming, Jen. Regardless of what that own thing happens to be. And so many of us become kind of enclosed in the activities that we focus on and aren't necessarily aware of or familiar with what other people do. And sometimes we're aware of how, if we belong to a certain pocket, we're aware that other people don't know what the heck we're doing in it. And so that can sometimes, on both sides, affect what kind of questions and what kind of complaints and what kind of requests we get on the team, where people will be interested in either improvements or bug fixes that they see that we don't necessarily see. And let me try to come up with a more concrete example or explanation.
While you're pausing there, I'll just mention this out there. You have to thank the griefers for one thing: exposing all the bugs that we fix.
So sometimes we get folks asking, saying that they have an issue, and they tack on the comment, everyone I know is having this issue. This is actually a. No, that's okay. It's worth laughing at. It's well, there is. I tried everything also, but right now, it's this is. But the comment of everyone I know is having this problem is kind of a big thing unto itself, because sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not true. If it's true, chances are it's specific to what you and the people in your particular community do. It might even be restricted to the one sim that you're hanging out on all the time. But we see an enormous cross section of people who come to us for help, and we're actually probably more likely to see a general a pretty varied look at what kind of issues people are experiencing. And if it's something that everybody is actually experiencing, we're going to know about it within hours of a new release. There's no getting around that. So, yeah.
And occasionally we also get reports of scammers going around because Firestorm is so popular and so on that we get reports of bots going around, scamming people, spamming chat channels. Sometimes we get reports of that, but the biggies are the ones that are like handing out objects that are doing bad things and so on. We tend to get those things all the time. So yeah, the Firestorm being so popular, yeah, we tend to get reports of anything going bad within the grid. And sometimes even faster than Linden Lab gets reports, unfortunately.
I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to change your wording a little bit. In my opinion, it's usually faster than Linden Lab notices the problems. It's almost always faster than Linden Lab admits there's a problem. But on that vein, Linden Lab relies on the users, not requires, but relies on the users to report problems to them.
As do we.
The advantage that we tend to have over Linden Lab is the size of our user base. We hear about these problems a lot quicker.
Both the size of the user base and the facility of reporting, because we don't have premium versus basic setup, and we also, since our most prominent means of reporting issues, that is to say the support groups, are sort of a collective kind of deal. We have multiple people reporting and multiple people fielding the reports in the same space, as opposed to any kind of setup that you're going to find at Linden Lab, where it's basically one person talking to one person, who may or may not, we have no idea, be talking to other people who are taking the same kind of comments from other people. So we're able to make connections among common complaints a lot faster than it is likely, I would guess, that Linden Lab could, and that's simply a matter of infrastructure. Especially now that the JIRA is, ever since the JIRA got constrained to limited access.
That is our only special access that we have. We do not have a direct line with Linden Labs. I need to like to throw that out there because as a dev, I don't have, I could call Linden Labs and say, hey, I got this griefer here. Please take care of it. No, we can't bypass the AR system. We still have to file an AR just like everybody else. I think the only thing we have special in the lab, and Ed or Lindy, correct me on this one, is that they tend to listen to us a little bit better or quicker, and that's about it. We don't have any special permissions or anything like that to Linden Labs. We're just a user just like everybody else.
Electronic, I'm going to tell you, keep sending crash reports. They're not necessarily related to your operating system. If you crash, send a crash report. So, any more questions, folks? Anybody else got more questions? Or are we going to wrap this up soon? Everybody got quiet when I said that.
Yeah, they're all too afraid of me. Sorry, I had to do that. Well, that's the thing. If anybody doesn't have any questions, I'll just throw this out there, a little bit of background on me. The reason why I look like this is because I do haunt work. Every October, I work in a haunted house someplace. So yeah, I tend to be scary because I like scaring people.
Well, if nobody's got any more questions, I'm going to thank you all for coming out and your questions. And most of all, thank you for your interest in your using Firestorm.
Yes, and thank you everyone for putting up with me because I am not a PR speaker, so some of the stuff I say can be a bit weird.
Thank you all for coming and for participating.
No, Cassandra, but you get better results. You have fewer problems. That's your reward for coming out to the classes regularly.
Yeah, no. The main reason I happen to be here is because I just found out about this class literally 30 minutes, and about 30 minutes ago, and I just happened to be online. So, oh, I can attend the class. And it also helps us developers because we get to listen to the users bitch and complain and see what's going on out there.
Later, Amaya.